All right, a bit of quick housekeeping before we get started today. This episode was recorded at Sony Kando Trip very recently, but before the iPhone 14 was announced. So that's why we don't talk about it. We don't quite know about it while we're talking, but we do go over a lot of interesting Mac opinions and how Max approaches his reviews. And by the way, if you don't know Max Yuryev, you've probably come across the channel. Max Tech is just one of the go-to places for Apple news and testing and benchmarks. They do an amazing job along with his brother as well. They just really dissect everything that's going on in the Apple world. And to the point that it's caused some amount of controversy, which we talk about in this episode. And I think Max handled it really well, because it's a challenging thing. I think some people in the Apple world feel like, they don't love the way that he's doing things, but we're going to get into it. So anyway, just wanted to let you know why and when this episode was recorded. Thanks again to Max for coming on. Let's head over to Idaho. All right, this is a great episode. I've been meaning to get you on for a while, so thanks for coming on. Max, if anybody doesn't watch Max Tech or your old school channel that
there's some content that's still worth watching in the catalog, maybe.
Absolutely. I mean, it used to be more like camera focused back in the day. Actually, back in the day, we used to do more like mostly overlapping, like computer tests, like Final Cut tests and camera tests. And now, you've focused in a lot more on Mac and Apple and, like consumer tech, maybe I'd say. Yeah. And it's working. It's doing great for you. You guys have grown a lot. Working. You just hit 1 million. So congratulations.
Thank you. We're very blessed. A lot of the audience is great, supportive, watches the videos.
I watch the videos.
We get some good constructive criticism. Sometimes it hurts, but it helps us to improve and change.
Well, so. And also for context, so if anybody doesn't watch the video, not everybody needs to watch the video versions of this, but this is a good one because we are in person, outside. Yes. So I'm going to warn you, there are children running around. The wind is blowing. Something will interrupt us.
Might be a drone flying by.
There are drones flying over. So something will be noisy in the background. And we're going to pretend it didn't happen.
Well, good thing we have good mics.
Yes, exactly. So. And we are at Kando.
Yes.
Kando Trip from Sony, presented by Sony. So this is an awesome event. The other time, the second time we met in person was another Sony event. That was Camera Camp.
Yep.
And this is like a similar vibe, but different. I think that was all YouTubers.
Yeah.
And here, Kando, we have a lot more photographers.
A lot of photographers, yeah. And a lot of people some people just doing TikTok or just, Instagram without doing anything else. So. Yeah,
talking to Sony people, and this would be interesting to talk to you about, they're thinking a lot about that transition, just like we all are, of that, like, vertical videos, they're all fun and games now, but they're going to be real. At some point where like teenagers now will grow up watching vertical video, watching TikTok, and that's real entertainment to them.
Should I admit something embarrassing?
Yes, absolutely.
The Max Yuryev channel viewers, just mute it at this point. Yeah. On my phone, I think last year, I started shooting vertical video.
Oh.
I always told my wife, like, please, go horizontal. It's going to be terrible. I don't know what made the click. Maybe it's starting to do some TikTok stuff.
Sure, yeah.
And whatever.
It's because that's how you hold a phone. It's just so natural that it's what,
so terrible if you do the, not airdrop, but whatever. You connect to your TV, we're watching, looking at photos and videos.
And it's almost all black.
And it's exactly.
Yeah, no, there really is a struggle. And what I keep saying to anybody that'll listen, I keep telling the Sony people here too, I'm like, I just want my sensors to be square. Let me have a square sensor and crop what I want out of it. And then, I could.
Somebody actually brought that up here about shooting with a GH6 and shooting open gate.
I love the open gate.
And then the fact that you have a lot more cropping options.
Totally. And especially because that's the cropping you want is on the top and bottom. Actually, what are you shooting on now? So you don't do as much camera news anymore, so we don't find out. But
it's a shame. I haven't posted for 9 months on my other channel. Feel bad about it.
Ready for an update? Just like do an A-roll, like a behind the scenes A-roll setup, like how you
all Sony stuff.
Yeah.
I still have some Samsung cameras. I don't know if you ever shot with the NX1.
No.
Back in the day.
But I've heard of it. I remember that. Is that the one that had like Android on it?
It wasn't. It was their first actual decent camera, APS-C sensor. First one to have like phase detect autofocus, like Sony quality autofocus, but way back in the day when nobody had that.
Right.
But yeah, I have other cameras, but Sony's what we shoot with. So 3 A7S IIIs, 1 A1 with 8K for the times that we need it.
Nice.
Which are actually some legitimate use cases for
like
it,
what? I'd be curious. What's a legitimate use case for 8K other than a computer test? Can it render 8K? That's half the reason I ever shoot in 8K is just to see if the new MacBook can handle it.
So I think, well, the legitimate reason for us is for computer tests, but not for the video editing side.
Sure.
So when we're doing side-by-side comparisons, we have 2 MacBooks out. We're shooting, 4 or 5 hours at a time. It becomes a 25-minute video, but we have that top camera. And then so we need to show 2 computers and then be able to zoom into the details. Like we're testing out frequencies.
That makes sense.
All that kind of stuff. So we switched over to that, and it's dramatically better.
Because you're punching in and it's still 4K after you've punched in, or nearly 4K,
Yeah,
it's still
I think
sharp.
we'd punch in, I think, 400 or 500% sometimes for key small details on a screen.
Of course, yeah.
And so it would look pretty bad. But, it's like F9, ISO 1250, actually lower on the A1. And then, punching in a lot. So.
Well, I've also been amazed at how you've been able to like super optimize your workflow at this point, because you're putting out many videos, like how many a week generally? What's the target? What do you aim for?
During regular time, 6. During launches, 7. Sometimes we'll double post and we'll do
Unbelievable.
8.
That's amazing. And you got to put a lot of thought into like how you're on your workflow and optimizing all that stuff.
Yeah.
So like, what are some key things? Like, what were key changes you made that like, oh, now we can get videos out faster?
Yeah, I guess on just the workflow side, one central server. So years ago, we used to have external hard drives. We're swapping them back and forth depending who's working on a project. 2 projects are in one.
You're doing that right now.
So investing in like a QNAP or a Synology, like we use QNAP. Everything's all there. If we need to duplicate a project, split it up.
Right.
So everything's there, and then if we're referencing other stuff, like we have motion graphics, the graphs,
It's all
that's pre-made,
it's all in one place.
set.
Yeah.
B-roll's organized to access it quickly. Fast cards, like those $400 Sony 160 gigabyte ridiculous cards.
Speaking of Kando, that was so at Camera Camp they gave us samples of those super fast cards. But you're using faster than this. So these are 300 megabytes.
No, these are like 8. I think they're 800.
That's insane. I haven't seen those.
I mean, so
That's crazy.
we're shooting 3 camera angles for the hands-on stuff. We're shooting for 20-30 minutes, handing it off to Angelica, our main editor. She's working on it, grabbing the other cards.
Oh, it's great. So the edit is starting while you're shooting.
So after the first 20-30 minutes of us shooting out of the 4 or 5 hours,
Perfect.
the edit's going.
Yeah, that's
so
awesome.
we get done shooting, we're working on the thumbnail, working on titles, other stuff as that video is being wrapped up.
No, that's really great.
So, and Angelica's super fast.
Well, and
she's good.
I'm sure a lot of people are watch your videos that don't do any video production, so they only are thinking about the computer specs. But for anybody who there's some appreciation to like how challenging it is to turn things around like that still have all of the quality,
and try to keep the quality
absolutely up, I mean, the visual quality's got to be there, and the audio quality, and the information. Like, you still also have to deliver
really
on
focus on information.
That's the promise, right? Like, if it's got to be the full package.
We want people to come back, and people do. Not everybody's into following all the latest tech news. Some people follow cameras or sports or whatever. So we have that audience, but then we have all the creators that are here. When it's time to get a new computer, when they're something's slowing down or whatever, that's when they'll search it up and have some valuable info.
Well, okay, so one thing I'd love to hear a bit more about is like how you guys have evolved in the way that you think about testing computers as well, because I feel like somebody the other day here asked me what you do that hadn't watched your channel. I was like, well, you know how all the computer magazines used to do all these benchmarks when there was a new release? They all went away, or not all, but
a lot of them did.
it's harder to get that like definitive information, like how fast does it do some standardized testing?
Yeah.
And you guys have really kind of filled that need. So I don't know. I just kind of love to think to hear a bit about like how you approach testing, how you think about testing.
Well, I mean, it all started even back from like cameras for me, and then going into computers, wanting to upgrade, right? And then you see this new flashy project, and I love product. I love tech. So you want to buy it, but in reality, is it that much faster? How much faster is it? And I think the first kind of tech thing I did when I was still all focused on photo, video, I built a computer because I started shooting 4K when the GH4 came out, I think, and my computer was super slow. And I'm like, what the heck is going on?
Right.
I just spent, I think, $3,500 custom building this PC, water cooled, overclocked.
Yeah, of course.
What's going on?
It's just the thing.
And then it's like, get the best graphics card. And then I looked, and it was like 15 to 20% GPU usage at max,
right.
And then using Premiere. So obviously there's other limitations. So, upgrading something, does it make a difference? people say, yeah, upgrade this, upgrade that, but they don't back it up. So for me, I wanted to test for myself, share with people, and actually back it up with, you know, the actual speeds and facts, which is why I like doing the hands-on thing.
Yeah.
Because people see it in real, you know, almost in real time. You know, we cut stuff out, but it's not like you just say, hey, this is good, this is bad, whatever. So yeah, and that over time, you know, we did tests that we were interested in. We wanted to improve. Other people said, hey, can you test this? Can you add Blender? Can you add Logic? Like, I don't do any Logic stuff at all.
Sure, yeah.
But it's valuable for them. So we're trying to add value. We're trying to see how can we differentiate ourselves from other people. What makes it more interesting, what still kind of makes it fun. There's so much technical stuff, and some people hate that.
Totally,
but sometimes they need it. So on camera, we're genuinely excited, but we show some excitement. We have some fun. We make fun of some stuff or whatever. So that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate it. Like, because, you know, often you and I are reviewing the same thing when it comes out. And I take a much more not by the numbers approach, because I don't have the patience that you do, apparently.
I like the way you do it too.
But it's, I mean, the thing is like, it is so challenging to get real result, like to get useful information out of any test, that it is helpful to have like different approaches. Of some of it's just numeric, and some of it's standardized benchmarks. And then some of it's like purely, you know, this camera at this frame rate runs like this. Good examples before is, I mean, you were doing a lot of videos when we all started struggling with Canon R5 footage. Something about it just slowed down every machine. I mean, just like you were saying with there's
my $15,000 Mac Pro can't play it.
Yeah, like certain codecs just started to destroy. I mean, Intel Max especially, and I still don't know. I don't really know what was going on. There's some kind of heavier encoding.
I don't know if we want to get into the details.
That we needed to get. That we needed hardware decoding that I guess is built into the.
And fanless $850 M1 MacBook Air
right.
can play that back perfectly. Yeah.
So one thing I'd love to like. So people that don't get a chance to talk to you in person would wonder about is that, like, sometimes your guys' channel gets a bit of a bad rap of being like, well, you're like showing the worst of what Apple's doing, when at the same time you clearly love the product and use the product and choose the product. Exactly. I mean, and there's a reason you're not talking about Max but editing on a PC, right? Like, in the end, it's still like you guys like it. So how do you think about that balance of like when you're going to point out the worst, but you're still into what they're making?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough. There's the aspect of YouTube, the algorithm changes, the fact that now, like, within the first 30 minutes, I can guess how that video is going to do, or majority of the time, a month from now. Used to be after a day, you can change the thumbnail title. It can change, I mean, years ago, then it went quicker than to now. Now it's 30 minutes. You know, you get the first list thing. And so if you don't have a title that is clickable, a thumbnail that will attract people, then your video is going to get buried. So not only is it you want to get views, it's your business, but also if you're trying to help people and save people money, which we do a lot, we tell people don't buy this, don't buy that, then that part of it kind of sucks. So all of our stuff, I think it was like the first camera, it wasn't camera cam, but I think it was the first Kando where I took an analytics class. There was a guy who came in and shared about YouTube.
I was in that class.
And so he talked about like text in the thumbnail and that YouTube can read that. Talked about the thumbnail needs to stop you from scrolling. The title is supposed to get you to click in. And then in the beginning of video, you have to reference what that is, so it's not clickbait. And then it has to not be clickbait.
Right,
and
you got to deliver.
So each one of our thumbnails, titles, of course, we're going to put the thing that stands out the most. With the SSD issue thing, we wanted people to know about it. It blew up everywhere. We got good press, bad press. And at the end of the day, now 80% of our affiliate sales are for the higher models. So Apple's making a lot more money.
Well, and I almost have a hard time focusing in on the negative, because I just love the products. Like, I see how good the updates have been, especially if we're talking about MacBooks for a second. And it's hard for me to shit on them when they're just excellent. They're just very, very good. But you know, the flaws are still there. So I end up, so for example, on my recent ones, and for anybody that doesn't remember this storm in a teacup from a couple of weeks ago, basically, the MacBook Airs on the cheapest model, the 256 hard drive was clocked slower because it wasn't, there was two hard drives, or two, I use the word hard drive.
Two chips
running in parallel on all the other machines. To me, if you're buying this is one of the cheapest new Macs. This is probably not what you're concerned about. So I didn't mention it in my review, and I actually got flack the other way of people being like, why didn't you talk about this? And like, I just think that if you, the commenter who is super concerned about this, you're probably not in the market for the cheapest computer anyway, because you want it to perform that well.
That's true. The crazy thing is, so one, there's a huge split. There's people like, hey, you guys are overreacting. There are other YouTubers doing that. There are other, tech websites doing that. And then you have the side that's like, why aren't you talking about this? This matters a lot, and going out rage commenting everywhere, which we didn't tell anybody to do that. They both have their legitimate points. And then, so the hard thing about the negativity is if you're watching a specific comparison and it's like an almost 2-year-old M1 MacBook Air versus this next one, $200 higher MSRP, $450 higher, or $350 actual price. Yeah. And as soon as you open a couple apps, it is legitimately half the speed at a lot of, not one task, a lot of tasks. That's a legitimate issue. And the weird thing is for us, we have an audience that watches our videos that buy through our affiliate links that care, right?
Yeah, sure.
So they care, they're doing creative stuff. And I think it was like 70% were buying the base model when we were tracking our affiliate links.
Right, so you could see it.
We thought, are we overreacting? Because people are like, nobody buys the base model. But in the real world, the people that watch our detailed stuff, right? So if you're watching somebody else's content, like somebody that just focuses on, oh, look at this new design, stuff like that, that would make sense. If you're watching like these 25-minute tests where you're doing Blender and all this kind of stuff, and you're doing photography, you do care more. But they were still buying it. Right. And like I said, now I think it's 80% of them are buying the 512 model. Yeah. So it was a huge flip, and a lot of people bought the 14-inch.
And for anybody that missed this whole thing, in the end, I mean, I fully agree with your recommendation. Like, just nobody should buy the 256, but not only because of the speed, but it's not enough space for most people anyway.
That is true too. Unless, I mean, there's cloud, there's external storage. Sure. I used to buy the base model all the time. Yeah. Because 512 is not enough for me. A terabyte's not enough for me. 2 terabytes.
Well, but I find 256 is not even enough for my system to really still be comfortable. Like, once I've got all my apps and all my plugins.
How many apps do you have?
I mean, all the ones I got to test, like,
there you go.
And especially, things like Final Cut assets and like, so there's some like sound libraries. But yeah, I mean, Final Cut, good examples, like Motion VFX have like tons of them and I use them and I need them to just always be on the local drive.
So ours is about 100 gigs. Yeah. But yeah, when we're testing, we're struggling with these base models. Yeah. Sometimes we have to delete it and then do the next test and install something. Sure.
Well, and I also don't want to be like babysitting my downloads folder of like, okay, I got to sort through, find all the big files and find somewhere to put them. And,
exactly.
So, I always feel like getting from 256 to 512, that's just the first update. Like, if you do nothing else.
And that's what we recommended. Some people said get 16 gigs, stick with 256 if you don't care about storage. But no, you're right.
Yeah, I think
you're not only getting faster speed, performance, but also you're getting, double the storage.
Yeah, 100%.
So I guess I'll finish up that kind of thing. I'm on both sides, honestly. Yeah. I got sick of that, and the reason why we made so many videos is because people would call us out, like websites, other respectable creators. It got pretty crazy, pretty dramatic. And so when we say something, all right, well, let's see if we are wrong. Yeah. So then we do the tests, and
it would be a very different conversation if what you're calling it wasn't accurate. If it actually was untrue, that would be a completely different kind of problem. But the fact that it isn't a visible
in the beginning, we didn't know how true it was. Right. So when we did our first video, the teardown, we're like, hey, it has one chip, just like the MacBook Pro did that they released earlier. So that means that you might have slowdowns if you have a lot of things open, right? And then so there's like 50 comments saying, and people tweeting on Twitter, creators putting it out on Twitter, no, you're wrong, it's not going to make a difference, blah, 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 blah. And so like, all right, let's take a look.
Yeah, let's find out.
And then after like, a few videos, then you're kind of sick of it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I appreciate like doing the legwork because I'm not going to put that time into it.
Well, the cool thing at the end of it, even though I probably would have approached it differently if we could, take a step back. You have like MKBHD that said, with them raising the price, this 512 model or the 256 shouldn't exist. Yes. Dave Lee, a lot of people that we look up to and respect. And some of the haters, a lot of them changed their mind too. Right. Some of the strong haters said, okay, 512, that should be the base.
Right, yeah. And and I also think there's a lot of, what I always find strange is there's so much, people are just ready to be angry about, it's the tech is our sports, it's like, we have our teams and we get excited and we get defensive and
I always camera brands.
And the thing is, I'm not into sports, so maybe that's why I've never had those feelings of like, oh, I really need to, it's offensive to me if my favorite product has a flaw. Like I just don't have that attachment to it. But I get that a lot of people do. So it's
when people drop thousands of dollars.
Yeah, you get attached.
They get,
yeah, sure.
And then they buy a product, and then they go watch your video, and you're telling them not to buy this. I remember from doing camera reviews too.
Yeah.
And then they just rage comment like, you're wrong on all this stuff. And you ask like, hey, did you buy one of these? Like, yeah, and it's amazing, blah, blah, blah. So they're trying to feel better about themselves.
Yeah.
And it's a tool, you know, just these Max and whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, even a challenge on my side is that like the things that don't work out for me, I generally don't review because I'm not into it. So I put it aside and I'm not going to keep using it and dig into it. So it almost creates a bit of an imbalance. And I've talked to a few other creators, especially on the show, about that too, that can end up creating this feeling of bias because we're reviewing our favorite things.
Yeah.
But that's a more fun review to make. It's harder to review the stuff that you just don't care about, you know?
And I mean, I guess in our position now, we're putting out so many videos, we're focused on Apple. So we're going to review all the stuff.
Yeah.
Some stuff we say, this is terrible. Don't buy this at all. Buy this and this instead for half the price. Other stuff is great. Like the whole M1 launch, people called us Apple fanboys like crazy. And I mean, there's so much positivity to say. And that's why on this side.
This is the problem over the last, since the M1. I mean, let's just talk about Apple for a sec too. Because I just keep bringing up, I'm like, the M1 moment is going to go down in history.
Yeah, absolutely.
This transition didn't have to go so well.
And I don't think Apple thought it was going to do so well.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And it just is shockingly good. And all of a sudden has solved so many of my workflow issues. We were just talking about camera codecs. That just went out. I just don't think about it anymore. It is not a problem. Anyway, it's amazing. I just want to be excited about it.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And these new MacBooks are also great. It's just when you set the bar so high, or maybe they didn't want to set the bar so high, but with the M1 MacBook Air, it was so good for such a low price. And then you raise stuff and then you lower things. I mean, the whole chip thing is a $2 part.
Right.
Less actually, because Apple's buying crazy bulk. But I mean, they're positioning stuff to be more profitable from a business standpoint. That makes sense. But yeah. And I guess the last thing about the whole negativity thing.
Yeah, sure.
When you watch a comparison, this is how I kind of view things. We make content like for people to search up as well, right? So somebody's at a store, they're trying to decide which one do I buy. They type in MacBook Air vs Pro, they watch the video, skip to the section that they want to watch. That's what they're getting. But then after a week or two, we do the review, and then that's where it's a holistic kind of view from different perspectives of somebody buying a base model, they don't care, somebody's doing something else. A lot more well-rounded and focused on a review compared to comparison. We're just focused on this or this. How much slower is this and this? And people are like, why are you complaining? It's really fast. It's Apple Silicon, which is true. But it's for purchasing decisions.
Sure, yeah. I mean, the comparisons are still incredibly valuable because the money is very real. And I always, it's because I need to tap into that when I'm reviewing. Sometimes I'm just reviewing a product that's a loaner and I didn't actually buy it, and you really have to remember as a reviewer, like the people watching this video are all have real money on the line. I'm just going to send this camera back to Sony after I do my tests or whatever. But anybody concerned about purchasing it, like the money is very real. So,
and we had comments like we had one not too long ago with this launch where it's like, hey, we're a university. We're going to spend $500,000 this year on Mac products, Apple products, and you've dramatically shifted our purchasing decisions and you're saving us money. We can buy more computers and we really appreciate it. Or somebody saying, hey, I was going to spend $4,000 on a Mac Studio Ultra. Now I know for my workflow it makes no difference at all. I'll spend $2,000. Yeah. Thank you so much. And those are the comments that make me happy.
No, absolutely.
Or sometimes like, no, please spend extra money.
Well, and that's part of like the good news. I mean, I keep being excited about every Mac that comes out, and I keep giving glowing reviews because everything's good right now. But the other thing is like you can buy so much cheaper now. Like everybody can go down a peg and still get the performance they need. And most people, we're getting to the point where like most people I know in real life don't need anything more than a MacBook Air. Like that's really, we're getting into that range. And
I think we could do the majority of what we do on a MacBook
Air. I've edited a few.
Or a Mac Mini with same chip.
Full on 4K videos, like, nothing lacking from a professional commercial production on the MacBook Air. It totally works. And also when, I've talked to more professional editors than myself. So Thomas Grove Carter comes on the show sometimes, and he has done on older MacBook Airs, professional big shoots are usually working in a proxy workflow. And it kind of doesn't matter what computer they're using because they don't render it, right?
Yeah.
The editing is all happening with smaller files. They hand it off to a finishing
Yep.
Stage of production, and then the grading and special effects are all done.
And they're in crazy studios.
Yeah, and you have some big
full setups,
server tower that renders it out in no time, and
Exactly.
it's not even a concern. So I don't know. We're in this just amazing spot where you kind of can't go wrong with
the only limitation. It's ourselves,
Sure.
The creators themselves.
Yeah, now I have no excuse of why I can't put more videos out every week.
I mean, I remember shooting wedding photography on Canon cameras, only being able to use a center focus point because everything else sucked, and even that one sucked.
Sure.
It's like focus, recompose, take 3 shots. Hopefully one of them is in focus.
Yeah.
And now it's like I autofocus left, right, whichever you want.
The slow motion is in 720p. I mean,
yeah.
I used to, like, if I look at some of my older videos that were for clients, I mean, I'd publish them in 720 because all the slow motion looks so soft rendered up to 1080 that
so you have to.
I mean, we've come a long way and not that
drones
long.
Are, I mean, it's crazy, and stuff got a lot less expensive.
In the world of Mac, what do you kind of wish for in the next set of announcements? Like, what are the not based on rumors, but like, what could you use? What's missing right now?
Like in our workflow?
Yeah, you personally. What's missing?
I would wish for this
use?
iPhone screen not to dim when it's hot outside and the 5G is running.
I wasn't thinking about that. And that's a good one. But not just the 5G. I mean, you could turn it to airplane mode and it's still going to overheat.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That part of it's ridiculous. As far as our workflow, from the Apple side, it would just be iMacs, all-in-one iMacs.
Like 27-inch?
27-inch, yeah. That's kind of what we're waiting on. Mac Studio's doing great. Ultimately, we don't really need much more at all, I don't think. I mean, from the cameras, these cameras are so amazing too. We love the Sonys. The only thing is stabilization sucks. So I would upgrade.
Well, but people say that about the Sonys, or about the Canons too. So
they're better.
I hear
they're better for sure.
But I've been feeling like I'm missing out. Like the Sonys are doing better because the Canons have the wobble.
Let me tell you now, the A1 is not.
Yeah. But okay, because I have one that in mind for Max that I forgot to put in my review, but I do hope that we get that like larger screen MacBook Air someday. Like, give us all the thinness, give us the like. This is still reasonably priced. It's not the premium expensive. You're not going to a Pro, but it's just a bigger screen. Because I definitely know people. I mean, for the workflow with my wife is that we usually download all the photos to her computer. She sorts through them, and then I edit them on mine.
Yeah.
And so that means
you don't need any more performance.
Exactly. Yeah. She doesn't need more than a MacBook Air, but she can't work on that smaller screen, that smaller keyboard. So I think that would open it up to a lot more people would be able to work within the MacBook Air.
We would love it because it's going to be super thin and light for that size. More affordable. I don't think it's going to be super cheap based on what Apple's been doing.
Sure, but still less than the Pro.
Still less, yeah. And what happened in the past is, I don't know if you remember back in the day where the 13-inch they never had dedicated graphics. I think at one point the 15-inch base models didn't have dedicated graphics. So it was like, if you want performance, you had to do that, right? Mm-hmm. Or if you want the big screen, you're spending way more money.
Right.
Same thing on the phones, and now obviously we're going to have a larger, large size, cheaper phone.
Yeah.
So Apple's trying to diversify. They used to have barely any products. They're spreading it out. They're trying to get more people to come in.
Sometimes it feels like they're spreading it out a bit too much too.
Sometimes it does.
Sometimes it does. It's getting a little harder to tell people what you got to have a longer conversation to figure out what they need. Yeah. Because there's a lot of options, but.
So I guess the main question is, will they do that? I mean, I feel like so many people would not buy the 16-inch if they could buy a 15-inch MacBook Air.
Yeah.
I mean, which is what, that's what the rumors are.
But maybe that's what Apple wants. Like, do they care if are their margins still just as good on the MacBook Airs, so they're happy?
I mean, they hit 40%. Like, that's kind of their goal.
Yeah.
And if you look at iPad, people asked for years to have like a good keyboard, good multitasking. And when they finally gave it to us, they just made sure it's at least as expensive as buying a MacBook or more.
Sure, yeah.
So you can have it as long as you give us a lot of money.
Yeah, right.
Granted, the products are great, but spending $350 on a keyboard for your tablet is ridiculous.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's also talk about cameras a little bit more. So, A1, A7S III.
Yeah.
What's on your next wish list for cameras? Like, what's missing right now that?
So after hanging out yesterday, we were bowling and hanging out with a bunch of people. For some reason, I went on my laptop. I should have went to bed, and I'm looking up like the Fuji. What's the name?
The new one?
Not the new one. No, the 100V.
Like the point and shoot, fixed lens, 35
APS-C
millimeter.
fixed lens. I was looking up the Sony R1 Mark II, something small fixed lens that that would get me to go start wanting to shoot for fun.
For sure.
I mean, because I was making money doing photography, video for so many years, I just kind of got burnt out.
Mhm.
So at work, I'm shooting with cameras. Like, outside of that, almost everything is
Yeah.
phone.
I know. And then
But then when you look at the pictures,
the phone's not the same.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and I always try to never talk down on the phones because it's shocking how good they look. But there is just a different feeling. Like, they look like phone photos. Everything's in focus.
Yeah.
They're a little over sharpened, and it feels very different looking at anything out of like a real
on
camera.
Instagram doesn't look too bad.
Yeah.
When it's compressed. But like my mindset, we have 3 kids, oldest ones,
You want the
10 and
pictures
going down.
to be as good as they can.
I'm thinking like long term, same thing with like as soon as the iPhone gets 8K, I'm shooting everything in 8K.
Yeah.
Just for that kind of better quality and
Right.
long term thing. But yeah, I think just for the fun of it, get a camera that I want. I mean, I have too many cameras.
Yeah.
But
just one more.
Hopefully, maybe I'll go use it. Sometimes we'd go on a vacation and I'd take, 20, 30 photos with my actual camera. And then later I'm going through the photos, putting stuff together. I'm like, man, those look so good.
Right.
Yes, the iPhone portrait mode is good. And yes, when you make a video on YouTube comparing both on a screen, it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
But then when you just look, I don't know.
Yeah,
There's a
as soon as
difference.
it's blown up on the screen, as soon as it's full screen or you set it as a background or whatever.
And then
you
sometimes
can
I'll
see it.
even take, like I took the A1 when we went on our anniversary, and then I put on my phone. You can tell the difference.
I
It
know.
looks so dang good.
Well, so
even if you compress it.
What did you try anything new here? Because I've got to test a whole bunch of Sony cameras that I have never used before, so that was fun for me. But did you like grab some new lenses or take anything for a spin?
Touch
Oh man! Because anybody who hasn't seen the photos from Kando here, like they just have racks of literally everything Sony
it's amazing.
makes.
It's amazing.
So yeah, you can take out the 400 millimeter 2.8 or the.
So I've shot with most of it. I think I've done a couple shots with the 400, when that came out, but it's
I never-
massive. I'm scared of dropping.
I
that
never
sucker.
bother. Yeah, it's a novelty. It's like you just kind of do it for because it's a funny photo to hold a lens that big, but
Do you
I have
remember?
no need for
I'm
it.
trying to remember his name. I can't believe I'm forgetting it. Make Art Now.
Yeah, Josh.
Josh. Yeah. So
at Camera
when he was
Cam.
on the one wheel on a gimbal, I mean, you got to find some B-roll and put it in
Yeah,
here.
he's got it
with
somewhere.
the 400.
Oh, man, that's amazing.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
So,
and it worked.
yeah, there's a shot of me there. I was a lot chubbier. So I've lost some weight, but
But so today, actually, even for this video right now, so we're using two FX6s,
Yep.
which it's kind of what I spent the most time with here because I'd never used them, and they're the most similar to my C70. And I've got to edit the footage. I can't have a verdict yet without trying it. The one thing I found, though, is that talking to all the other creators here, I was like, oh, how do I set this up in the menu? How do I configure this correctly? Nobody knew because nobody can get their hands on an FX6. So nobody's seen these cameras anywhere. Even a lot of Sony people haven't tried them.
and like I've shot with like I haven't shot with Venice, but like all the rest of them I've shot with.
Yeah.
I owned an FX5, the original one, a
Nice.
while ago, and the built-in NDs are good. The
Yeah.
XLRs, that kind of stuff is great, but the menu system, like for us entry-level people that are
Right.
shooting with like a A7S original, we're complaining about the menus and these problems. We didn't know what we were talking about because when you're working with these, they've improved some stuff, but it's still really, really bad.
Yeah, I mean, it took me a long time to set this, to just get my settings right for this video right
There's
now.
like sub-menus that don't make sense and all
Yeah,
that kind
totally.
of stuff.
So-
And they can't change it too much because the guys have been shooting with it for a
Sure,
while.
right.
I'm sure they learned it.
But the thing that I have appreciated is I was thinking back to Camera Camp, which was 2019, and there was all these focus groups, and we would have these conversations where they're asking all these video creators, what would you like to see? Like, what are your challenges shooting with Sony right now? And a lot of us had the same list of problems, like the colors are challenging on a Sony, hard to make them look good. We need 10-bit, we need better menu systems, we need, I forget some of the others, but it's like,
Larger batteries,
it's-
dual SD cards.
it's all happened.
Yeah.
Flip screens, we
Sure.
didn't have proper flip screens at the time.
Your external monitor not to turn off with various modes.
Right.
They've listened. Like,
They pay attention.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've went to a lot of different events for a lot of different camera companies. Not all of them, but Sony by far pays attention the most. And I'm not just saying this because I'm here.
Sure, no, it's
I just said a bad thing about these
but-
cameras on the menus.
But it's why we're here, because nobody else has this like kind of connection, or nobody with me has this kind of connection with creators.
Yeah,
So-
I think I shared with you the way I first got invited, like maybe it was 8 years ago or something. The A7R2 came out,
Mm-hmm.
and I bought it for weddings. And I went out, was shooting an actual wedding, and it overheated after like 20 minutes of shooting 4K. It was in
Right.
a hotel room.
Right.
And so I had to thankfully grab my other body with me.
Yeah.
And so I made a review like, hey, I love all these things, but this thing overheats. And I think it was the first Sony that had 4K. Because I was shooting with Panasonic before.
Yeah.
There's no autofocus, whatever, all the other stuff. But so they reached out like, hey, do you want to come? And I came and I said, hey, the next one overheats still, and the next one overheats still, and they didn't care. And then I brought Panasonics. I'm shooting Panasonics here, and they're fine with it.
Yeah.
And they actually listen to the feedback. So props to the Sony team here in the US and the guys coming over from Japan.
Yeah.
That really care.
Well, and part of what I love about this is you get a chance to talk to the guys from Japan and tell them, here's all the reasons I mean, for me, that I still don't have, I'm not shooting a Sony right now, because I totally could. I could swap out all my Canon stuff for Sony. It's a challenge to switch systems, but I love the pace at which they're improving it. But I guess some of the things that, if any of them end up listening, some of the things that were still very challenging for me, huge one is no NDs on a lot of these video-centric cameras. Being, A7S III that you're using, and the FX3 that a lot of people here are using, like a lot of YouTubers are using it full time. Having to screw on an ND means a few things. First of all, you have to have it with you, and it's got to be the right thread size. So even right now, we were like trying to put an ND on your camera, and I have the 82 millimeter thread, and this lens is 72. I mean, so you have to have the right adapters, the right size ND, and then you also have to keep it clean, which is harder than keeping the lens clean. You can't necessarily have the lens hood on anymore.
And you have to color correct issues.
Yeah, and of course, as you move through the variable NDs, your color shifts.
Or if you don't have the same exact brand or strengths. I mean, I come from the wedding game,
list
dude.
goes
We're shooting
on and on.
4 or 5 cameras sometimes with different NDs on there, and then it's
nothing matches. And then also, then you're like, okay, variable NDs aren't professional enough. I'm going to step this up to the real deal. And it's like, okay, you put a matte box on there, now your camera's 5 times bigger, and
you're so slow at shooting.
Totally, you're doing fixed NDs. So, I mean, we need to get to a place where internal NDs become, if this is a video-centric camera, if this exists for video, we've got internal NDs.
So I've talked to him for a while, and I talked to a guy from Japan, and he was an engineer from Japan, so not a marketing person or anything. And he said, we can either do in-body image stabilization, or we could do an ND. For example, these FX6s have it, but they don't have in-body image stabilization. They have like the software, one.
Sure.
So maybe some new tech will come out.
I know what I would choose, but yeah, I mean, I'd still go with the NDs, and I guess I just wish that they had I think I wish the FX3 made that compromise.
I think so.
But maybe that's just me.
No, I think a lot of people are expecting that.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, why not get, if you're shooting with multiple cameras, most professionals are, or even YouTubers, you get one of each.
Yeah.
And then you can, use whichever one's better, or,
Yeah, for sure.
Together.
Then the other thing I noticed so one thing that's amazing on the FX6 is the variable aperture. So you have very small increments that you can move it up as you want to get a little bit darker, which is amazing. And a feature I didn't know about before too is it has auto variable aperture. Have you tried this?
Auto ND.
Yeah. So
sorry,
I said aperture. Sorry, auto ND, and it just is getting brighter and darker, just auto exposure, but it's not changing any of the variables that affect the image, right? No. So the image quality looks identical. It's just brighter or darker.
True cinema.
Yeah. No, it's really
well,
good.
you can change your aperture smoothly, and then it'll compensate with the ND, and it looks amazing. I mean, Philip Bloom did, some test videos and showed it off, where he would rack his aperture.
Right.
So you're going from seeing like this full scene to all of a sudden goes into shallow depth of field.
And it
it's a whole nother look.
I didn't see that.
Almost like rack focusing, but different. So that's pretty cool.
But the downside of it, which I assume is a trade-off of the technology, it doesn't go as dark as some other internal NDs. So on the C70, we can go at least 10 stops. It might even, I don't know if there's
I think it might be 10, yeah.
Yeah, and these go to, I think it's 7. So, which is like a noticeable difference if you're
You just can't shoot
shooting
f1.2
in sunlight. Yeah. But I got to look at this footage. I'm excited to test it out. I mean, huge step forward, especially since last time I was on Sony, is like now S-Log3 looks good on everything, because we used to be 8-bit.
Yeah, you couldn't shoot it.
Yeah, I mean, it was S-Log3 looked horrible. You couldn't use it. So we'd shoot S-Log2 sometimes, and even that had bad, like tons of banding. So we were all kind of hacking at it with like HLG to try to get more. Yep. I mean, that was a mess. So
I shot a nice, expensive house, S-Log3, because I had these beautiful windows, this pool outside, mountain views.
And in the preview, it looks like I've got all the dynamic range. It's all there.
Well, the dynamic range ended up being there, but the colors
are not.
It was not even, didn't even look like 8-bit. I don't know, 4-bit, 2-bit. I don't know what the numbers
So you published it in black and white.
It was, I mean, thankfully the real estate agent was happy and he wanted to see the outside. Yeah. But each time I saw that, I was just like, do I do this for free for them? Or what do I do? Oh, man. So, Tyler, what are you excited for? You asked me, what am I looking forward to? What would help? What about you?
Yeah, like workflow wise?
Anything.
So I mentioned that bigger MacBook Air, which I actually, I want to throw in that that's not what I would buy because I still want the SD card. So, I want SD card
There you go,
readers.
there's
And
Apple. You
yeah,
gotta spend another $600
put an
'cause
SD card in the MacBook Air with a bigger screen. So that's never going to happen. But there's that. What's been I mean, I've been happy with a lot of things about the C70. So camera world has started to get really good, but on Canon's side, they really kind of dropped the ball on build quality with the C70. There's the screen breaks for like everybody, and there's a bunch of handling issues that like same with the joystick is pretty poorly built. So like each brand, as you move through them, it's like there's these trade-offs, and you want to see them start unifying. Oh yeah, huge thing, top of my list lately is open gate. I mean, we've got the sensor is a certain size. Don't crop it when I'm shooting video. Like, why can't I access the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, Sony's not as wide as Panasonic, right? Micro Four Thirds, but
Sure,
you still could do that.
Yeah, you're still losing 5-10% on the top and bottom, something like
Yeah,
that.
and sometimes even more. Like the A7S3s, technically they're higher than 4K. So if you put in like the active stabilization mode, it crops in 10%,
Right.
but you still get 4K. So technically, if you'd have wider, taller, whatever.
Yeah. So, and also, I mean, I've really liked the sensors that have closer to a square format. So, like I'll be putting out the Fuji X-H2S video soon, and that's has full frame, like open gate options with the 3x4 size. No, is that right?
4x3 maybe?
I don't remember the ratio, but then
always mix those up.
Same with Panasonic is got that like very square open gate, which is like amazing to work with. So
de-anamorphic.
Yeah, so we're like on the brink of, we're still in. I'm surprised how hybrid so many of these cameras still are. Like the FX3 and the Canon R5C. We're like, look, let's get serious about hybrid. But they still didn't go all the way because they both still don't have internal NDs. The audio solutions on them aren't quite right to me. So I feel like there's still like one more hill to get over where the compact we have some compact cameras that are like, look, there's really no compromises for video shooters. Like this is everything you need for shooting video.
Then we'll really have no excuses.
I mean, yeah, like
we'll find new excuses.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also want to start paying a bit more attention to what's going to be coming up next. And I haven't done any videos on them because I almost don't know what to say about it. But things like virtual production, and I don't have anything to say because I can't afford any of the gear. We just had a tour of their little setup here, and they said it was about $2 million to set up like 20 by 20 room. And
film ride to do like a $10,000 version.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to happen sooner than we think. So that's why I'm paying attention to it, even though I can't afford it right now. And then at the same time, AI imaging. I mean, it's a bit of a novelty. I think a lot of people are sick of seeing it in their Instagram feed. Like we're kind of getting a flood of all this like auto-generated stuff. And in its current form, I don't think that's what's going to be interesting about it, but it's going to really reshape the way that we deal with image creation. And we're not sure all the details of that yet.
If you really think about it, like on all these phones, like if you saw during Apple's event or Google, where they show like it's like 12 photos getting spread out that are taken instantly. That's technically AI imaging too, right? True. Where it's adjusting white balance for the person, different white balance for the background, brings some stuff up. I mean, we just see the final image.
Right. But just wait until you're the generating from nothing is what's like really interesting to me. Oh, yes.
There you go. I've seen some really cool stuff on it.
There's a great demo. I forget her last name, but I think first name's Karen. She's like a Instagram or TikToker, and she does these great little reels of just like showing up recent tech. And she just did one today of generating AI outfits that she basically hacked together a few different AI platforms. So the first one, she used DALL-E she took the photo of her and said, generate overalls or like a metallic skirt or whatever. And it renders onto this photo of her a different piece of clothing. Then she used another application, I forget, different AI engine that would paint that rendering onto the video of her. And then she would composite all the frames as they were all. So, I mean, it's such a different approach from like 3D generation where you need to be the artist. You need to like paint it in yourself. But instead the artist is just like, I want overalls, and the computer gives it to you. Like being the artist suddenly becomes just a keyboard warrior. It's going to really like reshape things, and I think just having an awareness of it, like everybody doesn't need to get involved with it right away, but if you like rely on professional, like you're a professional creating this stuff, if you don't know that it's coming and have some sense of what it's going to be able to do, you're going to miss out in a way because it's going to be significant eventually. So
yeah, I agree. Can't wait till I can just type in which B-roll shot I want of this
I
MacBook,
mean,
and then all of a sudden, bam.
basically. So I don't know. That stuff's always going to be really interesting. So I don't know. And then in terms of phones as well, it's funny because like I generally just don't look at rumors. So I watched any of your leak videos, or I kind of like watching
or a week
it.
out.
I like watching it cold and like being surprised. But I'm very curious where the cameras are really going to go next, because I keep hearing about, the kind of focuses on megapixels and stuff like that. And I don't know what, so maybe not next year, but like, cause that's actually only weeks away, but what do you hope for in like a year for next, the iPhone 15, iPhone 16, like what's the general direction you think would be interesting for photography on phones?
Well, I guess from my perspective, just what I would want, and also from the perspective of like what the competition has, the one thing they're missing is like an actual telephoto, camera. They went from 2 to 2.5. I think the 2.5 was like worse than the 2. The 3 got better.
Sure.
And then you look at, Samsung, they can do what is it, 10x, I think?
Like real zoom.
I was going to pull out the S22, but it's the full.
Right.
And I mean, the difference is dramatic. And I actually do zoom shots. My
Sure.
kids are out playing, whatever, and the images kind of suck.
Yeah.
So computational can only go so far. That's one of it. I mean, I talked about, video, 8K, shooting videos of my kids and stuff for the future. I want that, and they're going to go that way. I mean, they've done a great job avoiding just marketing fluff. So I'm very excited to see how it actually does. Obviously, there's downsides, like you can't do as much processing, or you need a much more powerful image processor to do that. So what I really love, like we love doing the blind camera comparisons. Like we're like, how can we stand out from other people doing all these camera comparisons? So, one of us shoots it, the other is watch, we vote, we figure out what it is. But I also really enjoy doing the triple generation one. So the last few years, like I did the iPhone 13 versus 12 versus 11. So 3 generations, all with the latest software updates.
Yep.
And seeing how much of a difference is it. Sometimes it's not much when you factor in the software updates, and Apple does improve the cameras. They just don't say anything.
Sure.
Sometimes it's very little, and sometimes it gets worse. Like the 2.5 X camera actually got
softer.
Worse. So we'll see. We'll see kind of how it does. But in general, I don't know. How much better can they get?
Yeah. Well, that's where I'd like to see it actually more so than, I mean, you're mentioning the zoom lens getting better, but I'm not as concerned about the range. I would just like to see it look better, like not be visibly different from the wide in terms of just like image quality, like traditional image quality, sharpness, get a bit of a faster aperture on there. And even more so, my pet peeve one is the ultra wide. I use the ultra wide all the time. I love the ultra wide. It changed the way I shoot with the phone more than anything else. And I think many people, people now take for granted how wide of a lens they have, because like, 13?
I think it is 13. It's
13
a lot wider than
is
Samsung.
Crazy wide.
Yeah.
And we're just used to it now. But it's not, the quality is not the same as the regular wide. It feels like, an iPhone 10.
Yeah, I feel like they were closer with the iPhone 12s.
Yeah.
The 13s, the main one got a lot better, so it's significant. And then we did a comparison with the Fold and the S22, and the ultra-wide just got destroyed. The iPhone one did. Yeah. So I guess it's going to get better. It has to.
Yeah, it has to. So I don't know.
But then again, you go into like, cell phones versus real cameras. If real cameras are improving their sensors, the gap's getting closer, but then you have these kind of jumps. Same thing with like the main sensor gets a lot better. The ultra-wide can get better, but they can't.
They can't stay at the same point all the time. Right? Yeah. I mean, I like that they've kind of given up on not worrying about how big the camera bump gets. I'm happy to let it just grow and grow.
Did you see the image online? I think it was Ian Zelbo, where like the camera bump was like this,
just the back.
And it was on a mini. It was
the camera bump can be like the size of the wallet magnet attachment.
Pretty much.
I'd be happy to see that. I mean, the phone is mostly a camera to me, so. I don't know. That was most stuff I want to talk to you about, though, Max.
Nice.
I mean, this has been awesome. Also, I'd love to talk to you more, just online or offline or whatever, about how you've been able to do such a great job growing your channel. Because
thank you.
It's amazing. It's hard to do, especially
all the clickbait, man.
Oh well, no. I mean, we got to deliver. You just said you can't just have the bait. It's got to be in there too.
When you have genuine clickbait, like you'll see it in your audience retention.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you'll still have people commenting no matter what, saying negative comments
and
or whatever.
A disclaimer for anyone that doesn't YouTube that is like, you see a lot of people frustrated with the way like YouTube faces, for example, like reaction faces or just the fact that titles and thumbnails are always really, really excited. People don't watch otherwise. I mean, they're only commenting because they clicked on the video, and they wouldn't have clicked on the video otherwise. It's really a challenge to strike that balance of bringing people in and then delivering. And if anybody hasn't done it, they don't know how challenging
you
that
can
is.
deliver, but not bring people in. Yeah,
That's what I like to think I'm doing. But
you're doing a good job. Have you, before I forget, do you know Everyday Dad?
Yeah.
So he has pinned on his Twitter, like, what you guys tell me you want my thumbnails to be, and then what you click on.
Right.
And it's like, drastic difference.
100%
So people complain about, what we call as clickable titles.
Yeah.
But then when you do something more generic, stuff that worked 3-4 years ago, nobody clicks on it.
Yeah. Well,
So,
I can take a closer look at your titles and thumbnails and get some ideas, get some inspiration.
and it's what makes me sad is like I follow a variety of creators in different places, and there's some amazing ones that had 2 million, 5 million subscribers, getting 2 million views per video, 3-4 years ago. And there's some of them that are now doing 50,000 views per video.
Mm-hmm.
And they kept doing the same exact thing they did that worked. And that's kind of what happened.
Very interesting difference here too is like very few people here are vlogging at all. Like
I know
there's almost nobody. I mean, people are creating some videos. This is the video I'm going to create from here. Plus, I'll do an Instagram reel, I think. But a few years ago, everyone would be vlogging this whole thing, and obviously it's obvious why. It's because it's been replaced by Instagram stories and TikTok and stuff. But that's just such an interesting example of that shift.
And there's this kind of like, from a lot of people's kind of like uncomfort about TikTok, a lot of the YouTubers that are here.
Yeah.
And of course, the photographers that post on Instagram, the fact that they're pushing video so hard.
I'm uncomfortable with all of it, but...
And I mean, most of us generally agree, and we're trying to navigate this landscape, and how do we do it and do it well, so they're, not only is it entertaining and people watch, but actually provides value.
Yeah.
Majority of people here care. So yeah, there's some people doing great. A lot of us are trying to figure it out, and so just like us too.
yeah. Well, you're doing great. So anyway, thanks again, Max. Like this is seriously awesome.
I know, it flew by.
So.